Here's a video showcasing the process of me turning a raw 3D print of a Power Rangers Cosmic Fury Morpher into a finished prop. Longer video compared to my usual stuff, but I want to be as in-depth as possible in the process. So firstly, I got the raw 3D print and I sanded it down using some coarse sandpaper. After that, I used a couple of coats of spray putty to fill in the layer lines. I did a few coats to make sure I filled the layer lines as good as possible. After letting the spray putty dry, I sanded down some of the rougher areas, but some areas needed more work. So for these, I used a flexible scraper and some modelling paste and applied it as thin as possible to fill in the rougher remaining areas. Modelling paste can be a bit tricky to apply sometimes because it's a strange consistency. It's thicker than most fillers, but it's not as thick as wood filler. So applying it can be tricky. And as you can see here, I think I use a mixture of the flexible chisel and also my finger to help work it into the harder areas more easily. Once the modelling paste was dry, I used a fairly fine sandpaper and I did some wet sanding to get rid of as much modelling paste as possible. With experience doing this on newer projects, I actually don't recommend doing this because you get rid of most of the modelling paste. Instead, I'd work up through the various grits of sandpaper and build it up that way. After removing the excess modelling paste, I went back to the spray putty and applied a few coats on the remaining areas. I decided to take a few photos of the Morpher in this stage because I thought, completely covered in spray putty, it actually looked pretty cool, so I wanted to take some pictures of it. Once I was satisfied the Morpher was smooth enough, I went on to start painting it, and here I'm using Rust-Oleum metallic finish chrome. And as you can see, after even one coat it leaves a good finish, but I wanted a better, more shiny finish, so I ended up applying between 2 to 3 more coats until I got the shine and the finish that I wanted. Once the chrome had dried, I began masking off some of the areas of the Morpher. There's a few different colours on this Morpher, but I decided to paint the gold first, as the colours of the Morpher was mostly silver and gold. I really like the gold paint I used here, because I really like the thickness of it. One coat probably would have been enough, but it was really nice to apply, it went on really good, and it was really easy to pull the masking tape off as well, and it didn't leak, didn't bleed. I really loved it using this gold. And as you can see here, I'm removing all the masking tape I did earlier to get ready to paint the rest of the colours, the next one being black. But as you can see in the next part of the video, I did have quite a bit of problems with the black paint that I used. Looking back, it probably was my fault for not mixing the tin enough, but I really did not enjoy painting this black on because it was really thin, and like here, my kind of solution was to just really put too much on the brush and apply it that way, but this really messed up one side of the Morpher. One side came out decent, but another side I got a lot of problems with, and you'll see what happens with that later on in the video. But you can even see parts of it now because it's quite blotchy, and parts of the black dried before other parts, and the finish, like here, it just looked horrible. It was kind of sticky, it was lumpy. So that, I think that's on me. But also in the future, when I've done these again, I have used spray paint, and that worked a lot better. I tried to hide some of the imperfections by applying more black in some of the rougher areas, but I think this just ended up making it worse. It ended up hiding some blemishes, but as you can see here, I'm painting the other side. This actually came out really well, so I'm not sure it was the same paint. I applied it the same way, but I guess, you know, things happen. Maybe it was contaminated a bit with grease or whatnot. Despite that, I decided to take the masking tape off the Power Ranger logo to see what it kind of looked like, and I didn't want to put too much paint on where the logo then ended up disappearing because there was too much paint in one area, so that was a decision, and here I am touching it up, and this side does not look bad, but you can see the other side looked terrible. It ended up cracking because the paint was too thick, it didn't dry properly. And here, I'm trying to salvage it at least. I started trying to attack the side using very coarse sandpaper, sanding sponge, but this just didn't do it because there was a bit real thickness onto it. So I resorted in using a Stanley blade, and this actually worked incredibly well. Quite insane that the paint was thick enough that I could use a knife to peel it off, but it worked. And it wasn't too bad because I got most of it off, and then I could attack it then with some sandpaper, and this actually worked really well, and it wasn't too bad in the end. And as you can see here, I think I ended up using the same paint. I might have used a spray can, but I can't remember. Either way, I'm painting it on now, trying not to be too thick with how I'm applying the layers, and it ended up turning out really good. There's a bit rough areas where I sanded it off, but I'll be touching that up now, but it's a lot better than what it was before. Similar problems happened in the back of the Morpher because I used the same paint. And here you can see some chunks actually chip off. So, yeah. Similar to what I did with the other side of the Morpher with the paint messed up, I just applied light coats of black to the back of it, and that seemed to work very well. Once I finished painting the black, I decided to start painting the red details. So here, it was the cosmic orb that was attached to the Morpher and the eyes on the Morpher. And I really like how these turned out. I thought originally the red was too dark, but seeing it contrast with the gold and the silver, I really like how it turned out. These are some images of the Morpher from this stage, but unfortunately, I haven't got any footage of me painting the final details, but I do have footage after I painted them, which is coming up next. Here's what the final Morpher ended up looking like. I added some black details between the grooves on the silver and between the teeth, and I feel like this added detail really makes the Morpher pop. I also added some subtle light blue details right near the eyes of the Morpher and in the middle where the blaster port is. Other improvements I made since making the Morpher was adding a strap. I think this is a wrist strap I got off Amazon, and I duct taped it to the inside, but it worked really well, and I wore it all day in a Comic-Con, and it didn't budge. It was a very simple solution, but it worked really well. As you can see here, it secures to my wrist, and I'm moving it up and down, and it does not budge, so I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Also, while I was at the con, I managed to get David Yost's, or better known as Billy's, autograph. And I thought that was really cool because in Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, he's the one that introduces the Morpher to the Power Rangers. At the time, while I was working on the previous version of the Morpher, a new version came out. And as this Morpher had more functionality than the previous, I knew I had to print it. I absolutely love how the hatch can open and close, and you can add your own cosmic crystals into it. I did originally print a blue, red, and black crystal, but I've lost the red one, the blue one broke, so here's the black one. But I'm definitely planning on at least printing the others just in plastic, but I also want to try and cast them in resin. It's something I'm working on, and I'm hoping I'll be able to do it. I'm just trying to figure out the right way to do it. As I've mentioned a few times in this video, this isn't like my regular uploads. This is a longer video than I usually post. So any feedback is welcome. What can I improve? What you like? What you didn't like? What you didn't like, you can comment. If you liked it, like it, drop a follow, maybe even subscribe on other platforms. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time.